Lies, crowns, and illegitimate children. Framing the tragedy. A single lie can decide the fate of a kingdom. An illegitimate child can doom a dynasty before they can even speak their first word. In this world, crowns are won in bedrooms as often as on battlefields, and the softest whisper in the dark can be more dangerous than 1,000 swords. The thrones here are not chairs. They are cages made of promises and sharpened steel. There is one throne in particular, hammered together from the blades of dead enemies, that cuts the flesh of any king or queen who dares to sit upon it. It seemed like power. It was actually a warning. Every drop of blood it draws is a quiet reminder of the real price of power. Kingdoms rise on secrets. Kingdoms fall when those secrets wake up. Long before banners are raised and drums of war begin to beat, there are gentle knocks on quiet doors, late-night councils, and hushed arguments in narrow corridors. A hand lingers where it should not. A vow bends just a little. An innocent child is born into a lie that would change everything. Tonight, those lies and bloodlines become a bedtime story. The battles will be distant thunder, far away on the horizon. The screams will fade into echoes. We will move slowly, step by step, through thousands of years, from the first age of mist and magic to the last dying ember of dragonfire. The names of kings, queens, and forgotten heroes will drift by like leaves on a dark river, gentle and unhurried. Before there were lords and ladies arguing over titles, there were only deep forests and long winters. In those early days, children of the forest whispered to the trees and shaped the world with powers older than any crown. Men came with bronze swords and hard hands, and the first walls were raised not to keep neighbors out, but to hold back something far colder. A barrier of stone, ice, and ancient spells grew until it towered 700 feet into the sky and stretched 300 miles from sea to frozen sea. It was more important than anyone could imagine. From those shadows rose the first heroes, the ones whose names would echo through the years. A builder who raised castles and that vast wall, a clever trickster who stole a golden rock, and a family name in the same quiet night. Great houses were born from single daring acts, from one choice made in the dark that no one thought would matter. It seemed like legend. It was actually the foundation of every war to come. Every oath of honor in this story has a crack running through it. Every marriage hides a bargain. Every council meeting leaves at least one person walking away with a new secret burning in their chest. Wars do not begin when armies march. They begin when someone closes a door and decides to betray a friend, or to love the wrong person, or to protect a child whose blood will call armies to their side one day. As you listen, let the chaos soften. The blades and the fire, the betrayals and the deaths will become like distant waves breaking on a shore you are slowly leaving behind. We will trace the line from the first long night to the last long war, in ways that feel gentle, patient, and clear. There will be monsters made of ice and kings made of lies, dragons born in storm and queens crowned in smoke, but here they are only quiet figures passing through your thoughts. Because in this world, the truth about who someone really is never disappears. It only sleeps. It hides in old letters, in half-remembered stories, in the color of a child's eyes. It waits at the edge of every feast and every funeral. And when it finally wakes, whether in a lonely tower or a crowded throne room, it does the same thing every time. It reaches out, touches every life it finds, and pulls the whole Game of Thrones toward an ending no one is ready to face. Our story will begin. For you, with a royal visit to a quiet northern castle. A king riding north to see an old friend. It seemed like honor. It was actually the moment the sleeping truths of the past began to open their eyes. From whispering forests to a king's visit, the calm before doom. So before that king rides through the gates, let's open the whole road that leads to him. Close your eyes and imagine the timeline of this world, not as dates in a book, but as a single long road of stone and snow, stretching from the first whispering forests to the last dying embers of dragonfire. Tonight, we will walk that road from beginning to end, from the children of the forest in the Dawn Age to the fall of the Iron Throne itself, all as one quiet, unbroken bedtime story. Long before Robert Baratheon was ever called king, there were no thrones, no crowns, only trees and cold and fear. In the deep ancient woods, the children of the forest carved faces into weirwoods and listened to the wind. The first men came with bronze and blood, cutting those trees, making war, until the pact was sworn and the Godswood became a place of peace. Far to the north, a wall of ice rose higher than any tower. More than 700 feet of stone, frost, and old magic, holding back a darkness that most of the world would one day forget. Heroes walked those early ages like half-remembered dreams. Bran the Builder raised Winterfell in the wall. If the tales are true, Lan the Clever stole a rocky hill from its owners with nothing but a smile and a lie, planting the first seeds of House Lannister's golden power. It seemed like legend. It was actually the foundation of every honor and every betrayal that would come after, the quiet beginning of a game that would echo through the years. Then came dragons. Aegon the Conqueror crossed the narrow sea with only 3 dragons and a modest army, but fire does not need numbers to win. Castles burned, kings knelt. 6 of the 7 kingdoms bent the knee, and the Iron Throne was forged from the swords of the defeated, a jagged monument to the real price of power. The Targaryen dragonlords ruled for nearly 3 centuries, until their own blood drove them mad and the last of their kings, Aerys, tried to burn his own city rather than lose it. Robert's rebellion ended that dynasty in a storm of steel and ash. A prince died on the Trident, a queen fled across the sea with her unborn child, and a quiet northern lord named Eddard Stark rode home with too many secrets and a baby in his arms. That rebellion was more important than anyone could imagine because its lies and oaths would one day decide who lived and who died when winter finally came. For now, though, the world narrows to one place. Winterfell, a castle of gray stone and hot springs, older than most kingdoms, standing patient in the cold. In its Godswood, an old weirwood watches with red sap and red eyes, remembering every promise ever whispered beneath its branches. The Starks who live here believe in honor, in duty, in quiet strength. They do not yet know that history is about to turn its gaze directly upon them. To the south, wheels turn. In King's Landing, on that cruel throne of twisted blades, Robert Baratheon drinks, laughs, and remembers the only man he ever truly trusted. So the king decides to ride north, to ask his old friend Eddard to be Hand of the King. A simple visit. 2 comrades from a finished war, sharing memories, sharing grief, asking one more favor. But when Robert crosses Winterfell's gates, he does not come alone. He brings a queen with cold green eyes, children with Lannister gold in their hair, debts that could drown a realm, and the long shadow of a dead man, Jon Arryn, the hand whose sudden death began this journey. With Robert comes a secret that would change everything, and dangers no one in that quiet castle can yet see. This one royal visit will wake ancient prophecies from their sleep, topple dynasties, and in ways that no one expects, melt the very symbol of power itself. The Iron Throne will not survive what begins here. But first, the king must step down from his horse, embrace his friend, and walk into the hall, where the North still believes the world is simple. In the next breath of our story, those doors will open, and the doom of houses, kings, and innocent children will walk politely inside. Honorable wolves and golden lions, meeting the players. Those doors do not open for a king alone. They open for ideas wearing human faces, honor, pride, cruelty, wit. Each walks into Winterfell on its own 2 feet, smiling or frowning, already pulling the realm toward a future that will end in fire and snow. At the center of it all stands Eddard Stark. Ned is the shape honor takes when it is given a quiet voice and a heavy cloak. He's a man of simple words and careful silences, who still believes that truth and justice can hold a kingdom together, like mortar between stones. When he swings the great Valyrian steel sword ice to execute a deserter of the Night's Watch, he does. It himself, because the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. It seems like strength. It was actually the beginning of a death sentence for him, and for many he loved. Ned's honor is his shield, but it is also a blindfold. He cannot quite imagine a world where a queen would plot a child's death to hide a secret, or where lies are more important than oaths. In a land built on broken promises, he still believes that if he presents the truth to the right people, the right thing will happen. That faith will be more dangerous than any blade, because in King's Landing, truth is not a shield. Truth is fuel. Beside him moves Catelyn Stark, all sharp eyes and restless intuition. She feels danger in the air long before it arrives, like a change in the wind before a blizzard sweeps the wall. Catelyn understands, in ways that Ned never quite will, that politics is a game played with lives, that every letter and every alliance is written in blood. When she watches Robert's court pour into her home, she does not see a merry company. She sees wolves, lions, and serpents circling her children. Her love is fierce, almost holy. She will seize Tyrion Lannister in a crowded inn on the strength of a dagger and a suspicion, because to her, the risk to her family justifies dangerous choices. Protecting her children becomes her only law. Honor matters, but survival matters more, and the line between the two will blur until it vanishes in the chaos of war. That choice at the inn will be more important than anyone could imagine. Robert Baratheon, the king who follows his host into the hall, is the ghost of his own legend. Once he was a storm given human form, a warrior whose warhammer shattered armor and thrones alike. Now he treats power like a toy he has grown bored of, drinking and hunting while others steer the ship of state toward unseen reefs. He is a careless harbinger of doom, a man who won his crown with blood and then forgot that the realm still bleeds. Robert's laughter fills the hall, but behind it lies neglect. He does not see the cracks in his kingdom, or he refuses to look at them for too long. He jokes about death as if it were an old friend, not realizing how close it walks at his heels. His carelessness is the real price of power left unattended. A king who will not rule creates a throne that everyone else must fight over. Walking at his side is Queen Cersei Lannister, pride given a beautiful, dangerous face. Her green eyes miss nothing and forgive less. To her, Love is possession, and power is the only true safety. She has been told all her life that she was born to rule, but as a woman in this world, she is expected to stand behind men she believes are weaker than she is. That insult hardens into cold, calculating resolve. If she cannot be the rightful queen in name, she will still rule in truth. Her son Joffrey is her pride made flesh and then twisted. Cruelty wrapped in entitlement. He treats pain as a game and other people as pieces on a board he can overturn whenever he grows bored. A prince like that is more dangerous than any honest villain, because he believes that his whims are justice. Cruelty is rot. It spreads, it poisons, and it invites a reckoning that will come with blades and poison of its own. Then there is Tyrion Lannister, the dwarf who walks into Winterfell with sharp eyes and sharper tongue. His wit is a shield forged in humiliation, a way to cut the world before it can cut him. He drinks, he jokes, he reads, and he watches. He understands that knowledge is power long before others say the words aloud. Yet cleverness is a blade that can cut its own wielder. The same mind that will save a city from fire will also lead him down paths of betrayal and patricide that would echo through the years. And somewhere in the shadows, smiling as he watches everyone take their places, stands Petyr Baelish. Littlefinger is ambition dressed up as charm. He has no ancient sword, no great name, no army. What he has are secrets, and the patience to feed them into the world like slow poison. He believes that chaos is not a pit, but a ladder, and he is willing to pull out every rung beneath other men if it lets him climb. Around them all, the innocents still laugh and chase each other through Winterfell's courtyards. Bran climbs. Arya runs. Sansa dreams of being a queen. They do not yet understand that honor can be a weakness, that pride is poison, that cruelty is rot, and that every clever plan demands a payment. But soon, one pushed child, one dead king, and one accusation will send these wolves and lions south toward a city where masks are more real than faces. The game is about to begin in earnest, and in the next turn of our story, a single fall from a tower will show how far and how fast a kingdom can drop. A boy who climbs, and a kingdom that falls. A kingdom can fall in an instant, but before the crash, there is often a moment of perfect fragile balance, when it seems like everything is still safe. For Bran Stark, that balance was the feel of cold stone under his fingers and the wind on his face as he climbed the walls of Winterfell. He was an innocent child of the North, with a head full of old stories about Bran the Builder raising the wall and the great castles of men. Climbing was his way of touching those legends, of making the high places his own. No one could follow him there. No one could tell him no. Winterfell was ancient, its towers layered like rings in a tree, each stone remembering some past king, some forgotten death. Bran knew every ledge, every handhold, every crumbling crack in the masonry. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who had never truly met the ground from a great height. To him, the danger was a game. The risk was part of the joy. From above, the courtyards looked small, the adults smaller still, their worries about power and honor reduced to ants on gray snow. On the day that would change everything, the castle felt unusually full. The southern banners still hung in the yards, green and gold lions beside the gray direwolf. The royal visit had brought noise, wine, and bright silk into a place of fur and stone, but up on the walls there was only quiet. Bran climbed higher, drawn toward an abandoned tower that no one used, a place of broken steps and shuttered windows. It seemed like the perfect spot to look out over his world. Instead, he looked in. Through a narrow opening, Bran saw something he did not understand at first. A man and a woman pressed close in a way that told him this was private. The man's hair was bright as beaten gold, his face too fine and proud for any common knight. The woman's green eyes were sharp even in passion, a queen's eyes, Cersei's eyes. They were brother and sister. They were not supposed to be like this. He did not have the words for what he had seen, but he knew it was wrong. A secret like that was dangerous. It was more important than anyone could imagine because it reached all the way to the throne those golden-haired children in the yard were meant to inherit. A king's blood is supposed to be clean, unquestioned. This was a stain hidden in a locked room. They saw him. Jaime Lannister crossed the gap between them and the window with the lazy grace of a man who had never feared a fall. He should have been a hero. This knight of the Kingsguard, sworn to protect the innocent. Instead, he weighed the life of one child against the safety of his queen, his lover, and their secret. This was the real price of power, the quiet decision that one small life meant nothing beside a crown. "The things I do for love," he said almost lightly. Then he pushed. Bran fell through the air like a dropped promise. The world that had always risen to meet his hands and feet suddenly rushed away from him. In that long, slow moment, a boy's body tumbled, and with him tumbled the illusion that the realm's rulers were lawful and legitimate. A child's scream, a crack of bone on stone, and the Game of Thrones became something darker than courtly intrigue. It seemed like a single act of silencing a witness. It was actually the first clear thread of a much larger tapestry. Jaime and Cersei were not only hiding their sin, they were guarding the truth that her royal children were born of a brother's blood, not a husband's. That secret would echo through the years, in riots, rebellions, and poisoned cups. Far away in King's Landing, another man had already fallen for asking the same dangerous questions. Jon Arryn, the old hand of the king, had died quietly before Robert rode north, muttering, "The seed is strong," as he searched the faces of dark-haired bastards and golden princes. Bran's broken body in Winterfell's bedchamber and Jon Arryn's cold corpse in the capital were two ends of the same question. Who truly has the right to wear a crown? As Bran lay between life and death, ravens flew. Riders were sent, and whispers began to coil through the halls. One fall had opened a crack in the kingdom's foundations. Through that crack, war was already beginning to seep. And in the capital, a new hand was riding toward the same secret, step by careful step, not yet knowing that every answer he found would bring him closer to his own fall. The dagger in the dark, from local attack to hidden war, one fall had opened a crack in the kingdom's foundations. The next blow came in silence in the dark, with only a boy's shallow breathing to mark the line between life and death. Winterfell slept. Snow hissed softly against stone. Fires burned low, and in the highest tower a child who had loved to climb now lay motionless, trapped between dreams and waking. The sick room smelled of herbs and smoke, the way places do where hope hangs on by a thread. Outside, guards paced, confident in their walls, in their honor, in their direwolves. They never saw the danger that mattered. A man slipped through those halls as if the castle itself had forgotten him. No banner on his chest, no colors, just a hood, a blade, and a purpose. He moved past the great stone faces of dead Starks, past the heavy doors and burning braziers, until he reached the boy who had seen too much. It seemed like a simple murder. It was actually the opening move in a secret war. Bran could not cry out, could not run, could not climb away. The assassin leaned over him, breath sour, voice low, almost gentle as he told the unconscious child that mercy would be quick. The dagger flashed in the dim light, its edge catching the glow like a shard of frozen moonlight. Catelyn Stark was there. She had been sitting beside her son for days, fingers raw from prayer, mind numb with grief and suspicion. When she saw the blade, she did not think of kings or queens or power. She thought only of her child. She threw herself at the man with a desperation that ignored pain, honor, and fear. His knife tore her hands. Her blood ran over Bran's sheets. For a heartbeat, the quiet sick room became a battlefield, with no witnesses but the gods carved in the heart tree far below. The assassin was stronger. He forced her back, fingers closing on her throat. Death pressed close, hot and real. Then the other guardian in that room finally moved. Summer, Bran's direwolf, launched from the shadows with a snarl that shook the tower. The wolf's jaws closed on the man's wrist, then his throat ripping flesh and ending the threat in a spray of blood. It was brutal. It was also more important than anyone could imagine. The direwolf had defended its helpless master, as if some older magic still remembered the pact between the first men and the children of the forest. When oaths were made in weirwood groves, and the wall itself was raised with stone and spells. Catelyn lay gasping, hands torn, body shaking as the wolf stood over Bran's bed, muzzle red, eyes bright and watchful. Guardian spirit. An omen. A reminder that the Starks were not alone, even when they felt most abandoned. When the dead man's blade was pried from his fingers, the true danger revealed itself. This was no common steel, no rough-forged weapon from some northern smithy. It was Valyrian steel, dark and rippled, edged with dragonfire from a lost age. The hilt was set with a pale stone. A dagger like that could buy a small castle. Few in the realm owned such a thing. Fewer still would spend it on killing an innocent crippled boy. That one object turned a local tragedy into something far larger. A hired killer could be dismissed as chance, as cruelty. A Valyrian steel dagger meant a patron with wealth, with connections, with secrets worth protecting. It suggested that Bran was dangerous to someone powerful, that whatever he had seen on that tower wall threatened more than a single marriage bed. Catelyn followed the blade's mystery like a trail of ash. South, past the neck, past the ruins of old wars, toward King's Landing with its red keep and whispering courts. She carried the dagger as both accusation and question, seeking answers from those who collected rare weapons and rarer lives. In the capital, men still murmured about Jon Arryn's sudden death, about a hand who had died asking questions. Now another hand, Ned Stark, would be drawn toward the same hidden truth, in ways that would change everything for his house. The dagger tied Bran's broken body to the dead hand's unanswered riddle. 2 quiet deaths attempted, one completed connected by steel and silence. It seemed like a single weapon. It was actually a thread running through the whole tapestry of the war to come. In years ahead, that blade would not rest. It would pass from hand to hand, from lyre to lord to exile, crossing battlefields and bedrooms. It would be pointed at kings and carried by those with no crown at all. Each new owner would think they understood the real price of power. Each would be wrong. And one night, far from this dark little room in Winterfell, that same Valyrian steel would be driven into a target that once felt untouchable, in a moment that would echo through the years and bring an ancient winter to its end. But for now, in the tower where the snow whispered and the fire burned low, a mother bled, a boy slept, and a wolf kept watch. The game had turned deadly, and the north was already moving, blade in hand, toward the lion's den. Wolves at the gate of darkness, the direwolf prophecy. But long before the north marched, before blades were named and banners were called, there had been a quieter sign. A softer warning laid in the snow outside Winterfell, like a question the old gods were asking. It began with a dead mother in the road. Ned Stark and his children rode through the pale morning after Robert's visit, the air cold enough to sting the lungs, the world reduced to white breath and dark trees. There, half buried in drifted snow, they found the great she-wolf, her body split by a broken stag's antler, her blood frozen black against the white. It seemed like a simple thing, a dead animal, a hunting accident. It was actually an omen that would change everything. Around her ribs, pressed close to the chill of her cooling body, 5 small shapes trembled and whimpered. Direwolf pups, eyes still too large for their faces, pelts matted with their mother's blood. Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and little Rickon watched with the wide, serious eyes of children who did not yet understand that honor and death often walked hand in hand. Jon Snow, the bastard who walked half a step behind, saw something else. A sign that the old tales might be more important than anyone could imagine. There were 5 true-born Stark children. There were 5 pups. The numbers matched too neatly for the North, for a land that still whispered prayers to trees. Then Jon found the 6th, a pale runt a little apart from the others, white as the heart of winter, with eyes like red embers in the snow. A wolf for the child who did not bear the Stark name. A ghost for the boy who never quite belonged. Each wolf went to a hand that was waiting for it, as if the choice had been made long before that day. Robb took Grey Wind, fierce and restless, a shadow that moved ahead of him in battle and made grown men fear a boy barely come to manhood. Sansa held Lady, delicate and poised, the gentlest of the pack, a mirror of the courtly queen Sansa dreamed of becoming. Arya claimed Nymeria, all wild eyes and snapping teeth, impossible to tame, a living promise that this child would never fit inside the narrow cage expected of noble girls. Bran Summer stayed close and watchful, calm where Bran was curious, a quiet guardian for a boy who would fall from a tower and rise again carrying visions of the past and future. Little Rickon clung to Shaggy Dog, all chaos and sharp edges, reflecting a childhood shattered too early by war. And Jon walked with Ghost at his heel, silent and pale. A creature half in this world and half in another, just like the boy who carried a secret in his blood that would echo through the years. They were not only pets, they were mirrors. Extensions of their children's souls, walking on 4 feet through a dangerous world. In the north, where the wall rose 700 feet high to hold back the dark, men still remembered that the direwolf was the sigil of House Stark for a reason. The old gods did not speak in words. They spoke in signs, in weirwood faces, in red leaves, in wolves. The direwolves came with the first whispers of the White Walker's return. As the long night began to stir again beyond the wall, these animals moved through the story like living prophecies, warning that the old magic was waking. When Lady died for a prince's lie, it seemed like a single cruel act. It was actually the first blood price the Starks paid for coming too, close to the lion's den. The first hint of the real price of power in the South. As the tale darkened, As kings fell and queens burned cities, the fates of the wolves would track the fates of their humans in ways that felt too precise to be chance. Each loss would mark another step down into tragedy for House Stark. And somewhere in the haunted forests beyond the wall, one wolf's eyes would open to a power older than thrones, pointing the last Stark boy toward a destiny no one in Winterfell could yet see. Debts, favors, and a boy named Peter. Weaving the web. But the story of wolves and weirwoods is only half the tale. Far from the haunted forests and the old gods' faces in the bark, another kind of magic was waking in the warm halls of the south, the quiet magic of debt, of longing, and of whispered promises that would change everything. Long before kings fell and queens burned cities, there was a small boy on a thin strip of land. Peter Baelish, fostered at River Run, was not a great lord's heir, only the child of a minor house from the Fingers, a place of hard rocks and harder winters. He laughed too loudly, reached too high, and loved a girl he was never meant to touch. Catelyn Tully, with her auburn hair and steady honor, treated him like a younger brother. To Peter, it seemed like kindness. It was actually a wound that never healed. He watched her walk by the river with Brandon Stark, the fierce, handsome wolf, promised to be her husband. Brandon had the easy grace of a man born to power. Peter had quick eyes, a quicker tongue, and no name that mattered. Love, when it blooms in the wrong soil, can be dangerous. One night, full of wine and pride, the boy from the Fingers did something that would echo through the years. He challenged a Stark to a duel. Steel on the training yard at River Run, breath steaming in the morning air, Catelyn watching with horror she could not quite hide. Brandon cut him down almost casually, opening Peter from navel to collarbone, spilling blood onto the stones. They say Peter cried out Catelyn's name as he fell. Brandon spared his life. That mercy was more important than anyone could imagine. It left Peter alive with humiliation, with a scar across his body and another, deeper one across his pride. From that day, he learned a lesson the Starks never truly grasped. Honor wins songs, secrets win wars. While the great houses boasted of ancient swords and heroes from the Age of Heroes, Peter studied a different kind of weapon. Not Valyrian steel, but ledgers. Not banners, but favors. Each coin he moved, each small kindness he granted or denied, became a thread in an invisible net he was quietly weaving around the realm. In King's Landing, that net found its perfect home. The capital was built on 700 feet of stone and centuries of lies, where a king could drink himself to death and a queen could smile while she sharpened knives in her mind. Peter Baelish rose there, step by patient step, until the small boy from the Fingers was named Master of Coin. To the court, it seemed like luck, a clever up-jumped lordling trusted with the treasury. But the books he kept were not only of gold. They were of names, of secrets, of who owed whom, and what they feared to lose. He learned the real price of power. A loan to one lord purchased a vote in the council. A brothel whispered the pillow talk of knights and kings. A kind word to a frightened child at court could be turned, years later, into unshakable loyalty. Affection became leverage. Trust became currency. The boy who had once loved Catelyn with innocent devotion now measured every smile, every touch, as an investment to be harvested. When Robert Baratheon rode north to Winterfell, Peter's fingers were already on the reins of events. He knew which letters to send and which to hide. He knew which rumor would reach which ear. A single raven winging through the cold sky could be more deadly than 1,000 swords. One letter, carrying Lysa Arryn's trembling accusation about the Lannisters and her husband's death, would draw Ned Stark south into a city he did not understand, onto a board Peter had been setting for years. It seemed like a plea for help from a grieving widow. It was actually the first tug on a web that would tighten around the neck of a king, a hand, and an entire house. Littlefinger's unseen hand would nudge kings toward their deaths, whisper alliances into being, and turn old friendships into open war between lions and wolves. And as the Starks began their long, doomed journey toward King's Landing, the man who had once bled for Catelyn Stark smiled behind his neat little beard, already dreaming of the next move. Because in the game he was playing, honor was a weakness, love was a weapon, and the North had no idea whose game they were walking into next. A butcher's boy and a princess's dream. The world's cruel rules. In Westeros, the rules are written in blood long before any child learns their letters. A gentle afternoon can become a lesson in death, and for two children by a quiet river, a simple game would reveal the real price of power. South of Winterfell, as the royal party moved slowly along the King's Road, the world felt wider for Arya Stark than it ever had inside stone walls. She slipped away from the wagons and banners, away from Septa Mordane's scolding voice, down to the riverbank where the air smelled of mud and horses and cold water. There, a butcher's boy named Micah swung a wooden sword with awkward enthusiasm, his blows clumsy but eager. It seemed like nothing more than play. Arya laughed as she charged him, needle still only a dream in her mind, using a stick as if it were the finest steel in the Seven Kingdoms. In that small clearing, class and duty bent for a moment. A lord's daughter and a peasant child met as equals, trading blows, splashing in the shallows, imagining themselves knights of legend from the Age of Heroes. It was actually more important than anyone could imagine, because this tiny rebellion against the order of the world was dangerous in ways that no one had explained to Arya yet. The game ended the moment Prince Joffrey appeared. Gold hair, fine clothes, and a real sword at his hip, entitled Cruelty wrapped in silk. He watched them with that thin, amused smile that never reached his eyes, a boy who had been told his whole life that he would be king and that other lives existed to entertain him or to bleed for him. Joffrey turned their play into a trial. His questions were not questions at all, but accusations. Why was a highborn girl playing with a commoner? Why did this butcher's boy dare to touch a lady with his wooden blade? In Westeros, a prince's word could decide guilt before any story was told, and Joffrey knew it. He drew his steel on Micah, savoring the fear, turning a child's game into a performance of power. Micah backed away, stammering, still only a child who had never meant harm. Arya saw the terror in his eyes. When Joffrey cut his cheek, just to prove he could, the scene shifted from play to something darker. That was when the Wild answered. Nymeria, Arya's direwolf, burst from the trees, fur bristling, teeth bared. Nature itself lunged at the arrogance of a boy who thought titles made him untouchable. The wolf's jaws closed on Joffrey's arm, and the future king screamed. For a heartbeat, justice felt simple. A bully had been bitten. A prince had learned fear, but justice in this world is never allowed to stand if it embarrasses the powerful. Arya drove Nymeria away to save her, hurling stones, sobbing as the wolf vanished into the dark trees. That decision would change everything. Back in camp, the truth did not matter. Joffrey lied easily, recasting himself as the innocent victim of wild northern savagery. His tears were real. His story false. Queen Cersei listened with cold fury, her gaze cutting past Arya and Sansa to the insult behind the wound. A direwolf had dared lay teeth on her son, the boy she intended to place on the Iron Throne. In that moment, the facts of the riverbank vanished beneath the weight of royal pride. Cersei demanded blood for blood. A prince had been hurt. Someone had to die. Nymeria was gone, so the queen reached for the nearest symbol that could be sacrificed to restore the illusion of control. Lady, Sansa's gentle direwolf, who had done nothing, who had never bitten anyone, became the offering. Ned Stark was ordered to pass the sentence himself. It seemed like a compromise. It was actually a ritual, a reminder that even a hand of the king must bend when a queen demands it. Ned knelt beside the innocent wolf, hearing in her soft whimpers the echo of his daughter's childhoods, and brought down the great Valyrian blade ice. The sound of it would echo through the years, a quiet prelude to the louder deaths still to come. In this single vignette, the core rule of Westeros is laid bare. The weak pay for the sins of the powerful. A butcher's boy is hunted down and killed on the road. A loyal animal dies in place of the guilty. A prince keeps his lie, and a queen keeps her pride. Innocence is no shield at all when kings and queens feel threatened. And as the royal caravan rolled on toward King's Landing, with one less direwolf and two more frightened Stark girls, the children of Winterfell were already learning that honor and truth would not be enough in the game they had entered next. Sansa's shattered fairy tale. The price of power. The road to King's Landing was more than a change of scenery for Sansa Stark. It was a slow, careful unmaking of a child's favorite story. In Winterfell, she had grown up on songs, golden knights who never broke their vows, gentle princes who loved one maiden all their lives, queens who were kind, and kings who were just. She embroidered those tales into her sewing, recited them by the fire, and believed, with the clean faith of the innocent, that one day she would step into a ballad of her own. It seemed like the world was waiting to reward her good manners, her courtesy, her careful obedience. King's Landing, at first, looked exactly like the song she had been promised. Sunlight on red stone, banners streaming from high towers, crowded streets whispering about the hand's pretty daughter and the handsome prince she might wed. There were silks and jewels, feasts and music, and a throne room where a king sat crowned in gold, surrounded by shining armor and polished smiles. To a northern child raised among snow and quiet, it felt like waking up inside a dream. But dreams have shadows. And in this city, the shadows talked. Behind the tournaments and tourneys, behind the bright armor of the Kingsguard, Sansa began to hear the low murmur of fear. Servants went silent when certain names were spoken. Men in fine cloaks lowered their eyes when Queen Cersei passed. Even the gold cloaks who guarded the streets seemed more dangerous than protective, their hands always a little too close to their blades. The songs had never mentioned how power smelled like sweat, wine, and old secrets. The first real crack in Sansa's fairy tale had come even before the city walls. Lady's death hung over her like a ghost, a direwolf, innocent of any crime, killed to soothe a prince's wounded pride and a queen's cold fury. It seemed like justice on the surface, blood for blood, a beast for a bitten arm. It was actually a lie-made law, a punishment laid on the blameless because the guilty were too precious to touch. That moment would echo through the years, long after the wolf's body cooled and her bones were lost. The butcher's boy never even made it to King's Landing, chased down on the King's Road, cut down for daring to play swords with a highborn girl. A child with no sigil, no lord, no one to speak his name in the throne room. His death was a lesson Sansa did not yet know she was learning, that to walk near a prince was to walk beside a blade, and that the wrong word could mean the end of someone who mattered less. This was the real price of power. Not just crowns and councils, but the constant knowledge that lives could be ended on a whim, that honor might demand silence instead of protest, that survival could mean agreeing with a lie, and watching an innocent bleed for it. To stand near a throne was to live in a place where your safety depended on the moods of kings and queens, where your own life was not entirely your own, and where every smile might hide a threat. Sansa tried to hold on to her songs. She told herself Joffrey was brave, that Queen Cersei was misunderstood, that the court was grand and noble. But each small cruelty chipped away at the painted surface. A mocking word from the Queen, a sharp look from the Hound, a whispered warning from a drunk, clever dwarf who understood that appearances were more important than anyone could imagine in a hall built on deception. Pattern interrupt. The songs had never told her what to do when the hero was the villain. As the days in King's Landing wore on, Sansa's dream did not shatter all at once. It fractured slowly along hairline cracks of fear and disappointment. One day she would stand on a balcony and watch heads mounted on spikes. One day she would learn to smile and say the right thing while hiding every true thought. One day the pretty verses she loved would sound like lies in her own ears. For now, she was still a child in a poisoned garden, breathing in the scent of roses and not yet recognizing the thorns. But the road from Winterfell had already set her feet on a different path, one that would change everything about who she was and who she would have to become to survive the game that waited inside the Red Keep. Dangerous questions, Jon Arryn, bastards, and the hidden truth. Those thorns were not only waiting for Sansa, they were rooted deep in the very heart of the realm. Long before the girl from Winterfell first gazed at the Red Keep, another man had walked those same halls with quieter steps and heavier thoughts. Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King before Ned, had spent his final days in King's Landing as a man haunted by questions. He had served Robert since the rebellion, had seen kings rise and fall, and he understood that a single secret about blood could be more dangerous than any army. It seemed like he died of a sudden fever. It was actually a death that had been arranged, a silence purchased because he had begun to ask the wrong people the wrong things. He turned away from lords and courtiers and went instead to the places no hand should have needed to visit. He walked among the forges of the city, where the air was thick with smoke and sparks, and spoke to a common blacksmith named Tobho Mott. He looked not at blades or armor, but at a boy, Gendry. A dark-haired apprentice with blue eyes and a stubborn jaw, an innocent child who did not know that the blood in his veins belonged to a king. Jon Arryn asked about his mother, about the gold Robert paid, about the way the king would sometimes seek out pleasure in the city and leave bastards in his wake. These were simple questions, spoken softly over the ring of hammers. Yet in a court built on lies, they were the most dangerous questions in the world. Jon Arryn's visits did not end there. He went to other blacksmiths, other homes, following whispers of more royal bastards. Brown-haired girls, dark-haired boys, children who shared nothing with Queen Cersei's golden brood except the man who had sired them. Each new face, each new shade of hair, was another piece of a pattern. To most, it would have seemed like idle curiosity. To a man who had fostered both Robert and Ned, it was more important than anyone could imagine. In dusty books and family chronicles, Jon Arryn traced the lines of great houses the way a maester might trace the shape of the wall on a map. Baratheon after Baratheon, From Storm's End to King's Landing, black of hair, black of hair, black of hair. The words were dull on the page, but to him they glowed like wildfire in the dark. Because the king's 3 official children, the ones the songs called Princes and Princess, were all bright as summer wheat, golden like their mother, golden like the Lannisters. That was the secret, the quiet, poisonous truth that would change everything. Cersei's children were not Robert's at all. They were born of her twin brother, Jaime, a love twisted into something that mocked both honor and law. Each time Joffrey sat his cruel little frame on the Iron Throne, each time Myrcella smiled, each time Tommen clung to his kittens, their very existence was a living lie, a claim to power built on incest. When Jon Arryn died, the questions did not die with him. They only changed hands. Ned Stark followed his old mentor's footsteps, moving through the same streets, pausing at the same forge. He looked at Gendry and saw not just a boy, but a reflection of King Robert as he had been in his youth. Later, in the Red Keep's dusty solar, Ned opened the same heavy book of lineages. Page after page, he read the same words Jon Arryn had read. Black of hair. Black of hair. Black of hair. It seemed like simple genealogy. It was actually a weapon sharper than any sword. In that moment, the game stopped being about tourneys and feasts and began to reveal the real price of power. A king's honor, a queen's pride, a realm's fragile peace, all hanging on the color of a child's hair. This was the hidden heart of the early story, the quiet truth that would echo through the years, toppling a king and plunging Westeros into war. And as Ned closed the book, as pieces clicked into place in his mind, he understood why Jon Arryn had died for these answers. The last question left was the most dangerous of all. What would happen when Robert Baratheon finally learned that none of his golden children were his? Before thrones and dragons, the Dawn Age awakens. That question hangs over Ned like a drawn sword. But to understand the danger of a king learning that his children are not his, the story has to pull back, far back, before Robert and Ned, before dragons and iron crowns. There was a Westeros with no castles, no roads, no names anyone remembers. Just endless forest, stretching from the frozen far north to the warm southern seas, a green, whispering world where men were only a rumor on the wind. In those first days, the children of the forest walked beneath the branches. They were small, no taller than a human child, but older than any man would ever live to be. Their eyes were gold and cat bright, their voices soft as leaves rubbing together, and they worshipped gods without faces or crowns. Not a single king or queen. Only the old gods, everywhere and nowhere, living in the stones, in the streams, and most of all in the pale-barked trees with red leaves and carved, bleeding faces. The weirwoods watched everything. Their roots ran deep, tangling with the bones of the earth, drinking in blood and memory. The children carved faces into them and whispered secrets into their hearts, in ways that men would never fully understand. Those trees remembered. Every birth, every death, every promise. The children had no cities, no towers. Their power was not in walls or armies, but in shadows and songs. They could call the beasts of the forest, twist the shapes of wind and water, and see through the eyes of ravens. It seemed like peace. It was actually a fragile balance, held together by old magic and older fear. Then the first men came. They did not arrive in quiet boats or scattered families. They poured across a land bridge from the eastern continent, a whole people on the move, with herds of cattle and horses, bronze swords at their sides, and the hard certainty that the land they saw should belong to them. They were taller than the children, stronger in the arm, more numerous, and they believed that power came from taking, not from listening. Where they walked, the forests fell. They cut down weirwoods to clear fields, not knowing they were cutting through the veins of the world. Red sap bled like blood from the carved faces. To the children, every felled tree was a murdered god. To the first men, it was only wood. So the woods answered with war. The children used the rivers as knives and the rocks as shields, breaking dams and calling storms, shattering armies with landslides. The first men answered with bronze and fire, burning groves and driving the children back into the deepest shadows. It was a clash of steel and sorcery, of innocent belief against hungry expansion, and it seemed like it would go on until one side was ground into dust. There is a legend, half forgotten even in the time of Ned Stark, that in their desperation the children tried to break the land bridge itself with magic. That would change everything. If it is true, they cracked the world and drowned 1,000 men. But the tide of invaders did not stop. The real price of power was that the earth itself groaned under the strain. At last, both peoples saw the truth. If the war continued, there would be no victors, only bones in empty forests, and weirwoods with no one left to carve their faces. So they met on a small, sacred island in the middle of a lake, where the trees were thick and the air was heavy with old prayers. There, beneath the watching faces of 100 weirwoods, they forged the pact. The children would keep the deep forests, the hills, and the far north. The first men would hold the open lands, the coasts, the plains where their horses could run. No more weirwoods would be cut. No more gods would be slain. The first men took the old gods as their own, kneeling before the heart trees they had once burned. It was a compromise that seemed simple, but it was more important than anyone could imagine. Because that agreement did not just end a war. It created a new world, a world where men and magic shared the same land, uneasily, under the same silent red leaves. The houses that would one day rise in the north, like House Stark, would swear their oaths before those trees, their honor bound to faces that never spoke, but always watched. And from that age came more than just religion and borders. In the frozen distance, beyond even the children's deepest woods, shadows moved, pale figures in the far north, testing the edges of the dark. The first stories of the others were born there, in whispered warnings around ancient fires, tales of cold things that walked in the night and raised the dead, creatures that men would forget for thousands of years. Until much later they stepped back into the light. For now, the pact held. The Dawn Age faded into legend, and a new era began, when heroes with names like Brandon and Lan would shape the map of Westeros in ways that would echo through the years, all the way to Ned Stark, reading a dangerous book in a quiet tower. Bran the Builder and the first Long Night heroes are just names at first. Then the world grows dark enough that people need someone to blame or to praise, and those names harden into legend. So the Dawn Age slipped into the Age of Heroes. The pact still held for a time. Men tilled the soil and raised their halls. The children of the forest watched from the trees with their ancient, unreadable eyes. And in the far north, where the wind cut like a knife, a boy named Brandon Stark began to walk. They would call him Bran the Builder. No one remembered his face, only what he left behind. He walked through the frozen north with snow crusted on his boots and his breath smoking in the air, looking out across a land that felt endless and exposed. It seemed like emptiness. It was actually a warning. In those days, the White Walkers were not yet a bedtime story. The others had come once, long before, bringing a winter without end, the long night. A darkness that swallowed harvests and hearths when the sun seemed to weaken and the stars looked cold and far away. They came with eyes like blue glass and dead things that moved as if they still remembered being men. The living broke before them. Villages vanished in silence. Kings in the south heard only frightened rumors on the wind, but in the north, people saw the truth in the snow. They watched their dead rise again and turn against them. That was the real price of power in those days. Not gold or crowns, but simply surviving until morning. No maester could agree on how long the long night lasted. Years, they said. Maybe a generation. Long enough that children were born into darkness and grew up never knowing a summer sky. Long enough that honor and law meant less than a single loaf of bread or a door that could hold through one more night. Men and children fought together then. The same beings who had once carved the first men from the forests with blades of dragonglass now stood at their side, whispering words in a language older than the wall itself. Somewhere in that terror, the legend said, the others were turned back. A hero with a burning sword, a last stand, a forgotten sacrifice. The tales never agreed on the details, only on this. The living survived by the narrowest margin. When the dawn finally came, weak and gray, Bran the Builder looked at the horizon and understood that survival was not enough. The danger would return. So he imagined a barrier that would make the world itself say no to the dead. Stone by stone, ice block by ice block, he saw it rising in his mind. The wall. 700 feet high, 300 miles long, stretching from one frozen sea to another. Men would say giants helped raise it, heaving stones as tall as towers. They would whisper that the children wove spells into its foundations, lacing cold magic through every frozen layer. It was not just frozen water. It was a promise. To guard it, Bran and the kings of the north created an order with black cloaks and heavier oaths, the Night's Watch. Thieves, younger sons, fallen knights, and innocent boys, all swearing to hold the line where the world ended. No wives, no children, no crown. Only the wall, the cold, and the memory of a night that had almost ended mankind. In the south, other heroes rose. Lan the Clever slipped into Casterly Rock with nothing but his wits and a stolen cloak, taking a fortress that would one day belong to a lion queen who burned cities. Houses were founded, castles were raised, borders were drawn in blood and ink. It seemed like the world was healing. But some stories are more important than anyone could imagine. The tale of the long night. The blue-eyed dead, the wall that could never fall. Over thousands of years, it faded into a fireside whisper meant to frighten children and entertain drunkards. Maesters rolled their eyes. Kings ignored the north. The walls stood, patient and silent, watching generations live and die below it, watching kings rise and fall, watching secrets pile up like snowdrifts. It waited for the day when the dead would walk again in ways that would change everything. And far to the south, in a quiet castle called Winterfell, a different Brandon Stark would one day climb a broken tower and look north toward that same wall, without knowing that his fate and the fate of the dead were already reaching for each other across the centuries. Lan the Clever, proud lions, and the seeds of rivalry. But not all legends in Westeros were carved in ice and shadow. Some were spun in gold. While Bran the Builder raised walls against the dark, another figure of the Age of Heroes moved like a whisper through the green hills of the west. His name was Lan the Clever, a man with no army, no castle, and no great sword. What he had instead was a mind like a blade, and a talent for turning other people's pride into his own power. The tales say he came to Casterly Rock when it belonged to the ancient House Casterly, whose lords were rich, cautious, and very certain the world could not touch them. It seemed like safety. It was actually the beginning of their end. Lan crept beneath their notice, a stranger at their gates who became a rumor in their halls, then a ghost in their dreams. No one agrees exactly how he stole their home. Some say he slipped through hidden cracks in the rock and filled the Casterly's bedchambers with mice and whispers, turning them mad with fear. Others claim he forged false prophecies, convincing them a terrible curse would fall on any Casterly who stayed. Another story says he tricked them into wedding their daughters to men loyal only to him, until Casterly blood was quietly replaced by Lan's own. Different tales, one truth. He took their golden fortress without shedding a drop of innocent blood. That would change everything. Out of that quiet theft came House Lannister, the lions of the West, wrapped in gold and convinced that wit was stronger than any sword. Their founding myth was not about honor on a battlefield or a last stand against death. It was about a single clever man outthinking an entire house and walking away with their life's work. In the centuries that followed, every lord of Casterly Rock grew up on that story, learning that the real price of power was not courage alone, but the ability to make others dance to your tune. They minted coins with their kingly faces and lined their halls with golden lions until it seemed like their wealth could buy anything: allies, armies, even kings. It was actually a kind of armor, hiding the fear that one day someone else might do to them what Lan had done to the Casterlys. So they paid their debts. They guarded their secrets. They smiled with perfect courtesy while counting every slight. In other corners of Westeros, different legends were taking root. On the harsh Iron Islands, far from green fields and golden mines, the Greyjoys clung to the tale of the first Grey King, who challenged the storm itself and wore the skin of a sea dragon. Their pride was not in gold, but in taking what they wanted by force, paying the iron price in blood. To them, a Lannister's coin was weaker than a Reaver's axe. In the storm-lashed south, another story rose from broken stone. The Storm Kings of old, and later the Baratheons, claimed descent from warriors who stood against tempests that shattered their castles, men whose castles were rebuilt on top of ruins again and again. Their sigil, the crowned stag, promised that a man could be both wild and king, that raw strength and stubborn will could batter down any wall. These were more than children's tales told by the fire. They were quiet instructions, shaping how each house saw honor, power, and its enemies. A Lannister lord believed he could buy or outthink any rival. A Greyjoy believed only in what he could seize. A Baratheon believed the storm in his blood would carry him through. In ways that no one fully understood, these old stories guided marriages, wars, and betrayals. By the time dragons returned to the world and kings began to fall, these legacies were already set like old stone. The wolves of the north, the lions of the rock, the storm-born stags, and the last dragons across the sea were all moving toward each other, pulled by pride and ancient memory as much as by chance. Each house carried its founder's shadow. And when those shadows finally met, when a Lannister queen faced a Targaryen queen, and a Baratheon claim crashed against a stark sense of honor, the clash would be more important than anyone could imagine. Because far away, beyond all their banners and boasts, something older than any house was still waiting in the dark, listening to these proud, bright stories, and preparing to tell its own. The next time it spoke, the whole world would hear, from Valeria's doom to Dragonstone's refuge. That old thing in the dark was not alone in shaping the world. Long before Robert's crown and Cersei's quiet rage, another power had ruled across the sea, blazing bright enough to make kings and queens in Westeros seem small. Across the narrow sea lay Valyria, a shining city of dragonlords and sorcerers, where mountains bled fire and men learned to ride it. Its towers were pale and tall as teeth, its roads straight as blades, its sky streaked with dragons whose shadows could swallow a town. The Valyrians had built an empire on flame and fear. They carved the 14 flames, their smoking volcanoes like altars to their own power, pulling metal from the earth and secrets from the fire. With dragons as their living weapons, they shattered rival kingdoms and chained the world in rings of gold and iron. To them, honor was a story for weaker men. The real price of power was blood, and they paid it gladly. Among these dragonlords, the Targaryens were almost nothing. A minor house among many, with a modest holding and fewer dragons than their prouder rivals. It seemed like they were destined to be footnotes in Valyria's long, triumphant history. One more family of pale-haired nobles who bred siblings together to keep the bloodlines strong. But in Valyria, dreams were dangerous. One night, a Targaryen girl named Daenerys dreamed of fire swallowing the world. She saw towers falling, dragons screaming, the earth itself cracking open. She woke to a vision that would change everything. Her father, Aenar Targaryen, listened. That alone made him strange. He sold his holdings, he gathered his household, his children, his dragons, and he fled west. Not to some rich and pleasant land, but to a lonely volcanic island off the coast of Westeros, a place of black rock, steaming vents, and smoking cliffs. Dragonstone. To the proud lords of Valyria, it was a distant outpost. To Aenar, it was a refuge bought with the coin of his honor and pride. For 12 years, Valyria laughed at him. Aenar the Fool, they might have called him, hiding his line among Westerosi storms while the freehold glittered and grew. It seemed like cowardice. It was actually survival. Then the doom came. No one knows exactly how it began. The 14 flames erupted together, or one by one, or in some pattern only the gods could read. The earth shook. The sky burned. Cities cracked and slid into the sea. Dragons died screaming in the smoke. In a single day, the Valyrian freehold, which had ruled for centuries, was broken and drowned. The proud dragonlords were gone. Their roads still cut across continents, their ruins still whispered of sorcery, but their bloodlines burned with their towers. All their careful breeding, all their cruel learning ended in ash. That would echo through the years. On Dragonstone, the Targaryens watched the sky redden and darken. News came slow, in shattered reports from terrified sailors, in rumors of a continent torn apart. When the truth settled, they understood. They were alone. The last dragonlords in the world. Their few surviving dragons, small by Valyrian standards, were suddenly more important than anyone could imagine. Luck had saved them. Destiny had too, depending on who told the story. A child's dream, a father's fear, an isolated island of black stone and smoking earth. These quiet details had outlived an empire. Dragonstone became more than a fortress. Its carved dragons and molten heart held the final embers of a vanished age. From those halls would come Aegon Targaryen, who would look west across the narrow sea at 7 quarreling kingdoms, each calling its own lord a king, each guarding its own secrets. One day, he would decide to cross that grey water with 3 dragons and a banner of fire and blood. 6 crowns would bend or break. A throne of twisted swords would rise from the ruin. And the story of Westeros would change again, in ways that even Daenerys the Dreamer could never quite see coming. Aegon's conquest, fire, blood, and a new throne. Aegon Targaryen stood on the black cliffs of Dragonstone and looked west. Where others saw 7 quarrelsome kingdoms, he saw one realm waiting to be forged, a single great shape hidden inside broken pieces. He was not a madman or a screaming butcher. He was calm, deliberate. A man who spoke softly, who listened, who carried his own secrets like quiet embers. It seemed like restraint. It was actually the kind of patience that would change everything. When he finally crossed the narrow sea, he did not come as a wandering conqueror with endless hosts. His army was small compared to the lords he meant to face, but Aegon had 3 living shadows that blotted out the sun. Dragons. Balerion the Black Dread beneath him, and his sisters' mounts, Vhagar and Meraxes, circling above like omens of death and fire. Visenya and Rhaenys were not just his sisters. They were his queens, his partners in power, each bound to a dragon of her own. 3 riders. 3 beasts. Against that, numbers on the ground became something fragile, almost innocent. Spears and shields looked like children's toys when the sky itself turned against you. Aegon moved carefully, choosing which enemies to burn and which to bind. Some lords bent the knee the moment they saw the shadow of wings pass over their banners. Others tried to stand. At Harrenhal, the proud and cruel Harren the Black trusted in his colossal fortress, its towers of stone reaching toward the clouds. Stone could not burn, he thought, but fire could seep into every window, every crack, every breath. From far above, dragon flame washed over those tall towers until they glowed faintly, then sagged, then melted like wax. In the distance, it would have looked almost peaceful. A great gray shape softening at the edges, lights flickering and going out, the outline of a dynasty dissolving in slow motion. Harrenhal did not simply fall. It slumped into history, blackened and twisted, a quiet monument to the real price of power. Word of that ruin flew faster than any raven. So when Aegon faced the combined might of the Reach and the Rock on the Field of Fire, the lords already knew what Dragonflame could do. They still came with banners snapping and steel shining in the sun. Tens of thousands of men, sworn by honor, marching toward a line in the dry grass. Then the dragons descended. From far away, it might have seemed like a storm rolling over the plain, the bright colors of coats of arms swallowed by drifting smoke, the ordered lines of men blurring, running, vanishing. No need to linger on screams or gore. Just imagine the landscape itself changing color, green and gold fading to dull gray and black as the grass burned and cooled, as proud houses were reduced to a faint, rising haze. That day would echo through the years. After the Field of Fire, resistance melted faster than stone under Dragonflame. The Stormlands bent, the Reach bowed, the Rock yielded. In the north, Torrhen Stark looked at the ashes of Harrenhal, heard of the Black Plain where so many had died, and chose a different kind of honor. He knelt, earning the name King Who Knelt, trading a crown of his own for the lives of his people. 6 of the 7 kingdoms submitted in the end, not just to Aegon, but to the idea of Aegon. Only Dorne held out, slipping through dragon claws with sand, shadows, and quiet defiance. They would not be taken by fire. Not yet. In King's Landing, on a low hill above the Blackwater, Aegon built a new symbol for his new realm. He ordered the swords of all those who had opposed him, real and imagined, to be gathered and fused together. Under Balerion's black flame, steel bent and ran like dark water, then cooled into something jagged and cruel. The Iron Throne. It was a chair, but it was also a warning. Unity through fear, peace balanced on blades. Every king who would sit there after him inherited more than a seat. They inherited his sins, his choices, his belief that dragons and terror could hold a world together. That throne, born in fire and conquest, would one day melt again, not under dragon flame from above, but in a different fire. In a different kind of ending that would change everything once more. For now, though, the swords stayed hard and cold. A new dynasty ruled from their sharp heights, and the Targaryen name, once minor in Valyria, became more important than anyone could imagine. The Age of Dragons had truly begun, even as the first quiet cracks were already forming beneath their feet. Madness, rebellion, and a fallen prince. But even dragons grow old. Even fire burns down to quiet ash. For nearly 3 centuries after Aegon's conquest, the Targaryen dynasty ruled from the Iron Throne, their banners of red and black hanging over a continent that never quite forgot the taste of dragonfire. At first, their power seemed unshakable, resting on wings and flame, on the belief that this one family was chosen by something older and more dangerous than any law. Then the dragons began to die. The great beasts that had melted Harrenhal and knelt the kings of Westeros were born smaller with each generation, until they were little more than sickly shadows of their ancestors, chained beneath the Red Keep and fading away in the dark. When the last of them died, it seemed like only a detail in the royal chronicles. It was actually the beginning of the end. Without dragons, the Targaryens still had their name, their history of brother taking sister, of uncle wedding niece, their proud silver hair and violet eyes. But the magic was gone, leaving only human weakness wrapped in royal colors. There were still strong kings and cruel ones, wise queens and vain children. As the years turned and the dynasty survived uprisings, Blackfire pretenders, and the slow grinding of time. Yet each crisis left a crack. Each war took away a little more faith. By the time Aerys II came to the throne, the family that had once seemed more important than anyone could imagine was only another house clinging to power, with old secrets buried under the Red Keep. Aerys began his reign handsome, hopeful, speaking of justice and honor. People cheered him in the streets of King's Landing. They did not yet call him the Mad King. Madness for him was not a lightning strike. It was a slow fever. Paranoia crept in first, quiet as a whisper behind the throne. He saw traitors in every shadow, daggers in every smile. His court became a place of fear, where a wrong word could mean death. Then came wildfire. Hidden beneath the city in green pools of liquid flame, it promised him control, a way to burn his enemies, a way to be strong without dragons. It seemed like power. It was actually a mirror, reflecting the fire already eating through his mind. As his cruelty grew, so did the stores of wildfire under the streets, turning King's Landing itself into a fuse waiting for a spark. That spark would not come first from Aerys, but from his son. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was everything his father was not. Where Eris raved, Rhaegar read. Where the king whispered to pyromancers, the prince sang in the streets, a warrior with a harp, a scholar in shining armor. He studied prophecies and histories, haunted by the idea that he and his blood might be tied to some coming darkness. To some he seemed gentle, to others distant, already half in another world. At the great tourney at Harrenhal, with half the realm gathered beneath the blackened towers Aegon had once burned, Rhaegar made a choice that would echo through the years. Victorious in the lists, he rode past his own wife, Elia of Dorne, and placed the Queen of Love and Beauty's crown in the lap of Lyanna Stark of Winterfell. A northern girl promised to Robert Baratheon, crowned in front of her betrothed, her brother, and a watching kingdom. It was a gesture wrapped in romance and insult, honor and humiliation, all at once. After that, the songs say, Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna. The official tale is simple and dangerous in its simplicity. The prince stole a young woman from her betrothed, from her family, from her home. Brandon Stark, Lyanna's fiery older brother, rode south to King's Landing demanding justice, calling for Rhaegar to come out and die. Aerys did not send his son. He ordered Brandon seized. He summoned their father, Lord Rickard Stark, to answer for this crime. The Mad King promised a trial. What he gave was death. Rickard was roasted alive in his armor, hung above a fire as he called on the gods and the king to show honor. Brandon strangled himself trying to reach his father, a son dying in chains while the court watched. With one act, Aerys turned a family grievance into rebellion. He demanded the heads of Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark, then fostered in the Vale, from their guardian, Jon Arryn. Instead, Jon Arryn raised his banners against the throne. Robert's rebellion had begun. It seemed like a simple story. A stolen bride, a mad king, an honorable revolt. It was actually a tapestry of secrets. For Rhaegar and Lyanna's relationship was not what the realm believed, and the child they conceived in a hidden tower would be more important than anyone could imagine. His very name would lie buried beneath false words and false blood, quietly undermining the rebellion that overthrew the Targaryens. The war would end one dynasty and raise another. But the truth born in that tower would sleep in silence, waiting to wake, waiting to show the realm the real price of power. Robert's Rebellion. The last dragon falls. The war that followed that hidden birth was a storm. It rolled over mountains and rivers, over keeps that had stood for 1,000 years, sweeping away oaths and crowns with the same cold indifference. Robert Baratheon led that storm. He was not yet a king, only a young lord with a warhammer in his hands and Lyanna Stark's memory burning in his blood. On the green banks of the Trident, beneath banners whipped flat by the wind, he met Prince Rhaegar Targaryen for the last time. It seemed like the moment of simple justice the realm had been waiting for. It was actually the end of an age. Rhaegar wore rubies on his armor that day, red stones that flashed like drops of frozen blood. When Robert's hammer struck him down in the shallows of the river, those rubies flew in every direction, scattering across the water like a broken crown. The prince's breastplate caved in. The dragon heir died with the song of the river in his ears, and with him, the last real hope of a peaceful Targaryen future. From there, the storm turned toward King's Landing. Aerys still clutched at the Iron Throne with fevered hands, whispering to his pyromancers, ordering more wildfire hidden beneath the streets. He dreamed of green fire cleansing his enemies. He dreamed of being reborn as a dragon in the flames. He did not see the lions waiting at his gate. Tywin Lannister had been the Mad King's hand once, the cold steward who kept the realm steady, while Aerys drifted into madness. Now he arrived late to the war, his golden banners finally appearing outside the city walls when victory seemed decided. He asked to be let in, claiming loyalty to the king. The gates opened. That decision would echo through the years. The sack of King's Landing began with broken doors. Lannister men poured through the streets, armor clattering, torches flaring in the dark. Flames licked up from homes and halls, turning familiar alleys into rivers of smoke. Behind those fires were quieter horrors. The last innocent Targaryen children, Rhaegar's little son and daughter, were hunted down and killed to prove Lannister loyalty to the new regime. Nearly 3 centuries of dragon rule ended not with a great battle but with small, brutal murders on stone floors. Somewhere beneath the throne room, wildfire waited in clay pots, enough to drown the city in emerald death. Aerys had given the order. Burn them all. He meant every man, woman, and child in his capital. Honor and madness stood side by side in that moment, and the choice fell to a single young knight. Jaime Lannister, white cloak bright against the blood and smoke, turned his sword on the king he had sworn to protect. He cut down Aerys on the steps of the Iron Throne, then slew the pyromancer before the final order could be carried out. To the world, he became the Kingslayer, a man without honor who murdered his own king. In truth, he had saved hundreds of thousands from a death in wildfire in ways that no one would understand for many years. It was the real price of power, to bear the shame that protected strangers who would spit on his name. Far from the burning city, another part of the dragon line slipped away like a fading ember. Viserys Targaryen, a frightened boy, and his unborn sister Daenerys were smuggled across the narrow sea. They carried no dragons, no armies, only their name and the memory of a lost throne. In exile, those last Targaryen seeds were planted in foreign soil, waiting for a future that would change everything. Back in Westeros, Robert Baratheon took the crown he believed he had earned with blood and broken bone. He married Cersei Lannister, binding stag and lion together in a brittle alliance. Jon Arryn, the man who had raised both Robert and Ned Stark, became Hand of the King, trying to hold the realm together with quiet wisdom and old honor. On the surface, peace settled over the Seven Kingdoms. But it was a fragile peace, stretched thin over secrets and lies. Here is the pattern interrupt the realm never noticed. The war had ended, yet its ghosts were everywhere. A usurper king on a throne forged for dragons, a kingslayer despised for saving a city, a queen who hated her husband, 2 dragon children in exile, and in the north, a boy with a false name and true blood, sleeping beneath a tower of lies. This is the world as the series begins. Calm on the surface, already cracking underneath. The hand who knew too much, from peace to plot. A single question can wake a sleeping realm. A single secret about a king's own children can turn years of uneasy peace into the quiet beginning of a war. In King's Landing, while the realm pretended to be calm, Jon Arryn began to notice patterns, hair and heritage, brown and black, gold where there should have been coal. He had lived through the fall of the Mad King, the rise of Robert Baratheon, and the long, uneasy peace that followed, and he had learned to pay attention to the small, dangerous details that other men ignored. It seemed like idle curiosity. It was actually the first tug on a thread that would change everything. Jon Arryn was not a warrior king or a dragonlord. He was an old man of honor, the hand who held the kingdom together while Robert drank and hunted and tried to forget the dead. Patiently, quietly, Jon studied the lineage of Robert's bastards and Robert's supposed heirs. He saw that every true Baratheon child in history had the same dark hair. Yet the 3 royal children in the Red Keep all shone with Lannister gold. The numbers did not lie. The blood did not match. Somewhere behind the painted smiles of the Queen and her brother, there was a secret more important than anyone could imagine. Before he could speak that truth aloud, Jon Arryn died. Suddenly. Conveniently. A cough that would not stop, a sickness that moved too fast. In a city where poison was cheaper than honor, his death left more questions than answers. His ledgers were closed, his books put away. His last investigations scattered like fallen leaves no one wanted to sweep together. But he did not leave the world entirely silent. In the Vale, his widow, Lysa Arryn, sent a letter north. Not to a king, but to a sister. Catelyn Stark, in her cold stone home at Winterfell, broke the wax and read words that would echo through the years. Lysa claimed the Lannisters had murdered Jon. She named the Queen's family as killers, spoke of daggers in the dark and lions circling the throne. Whether every word was true or not did not matter. The seed of fear was planted. The Lannisters were no longer just proud southern lords. In the Stark imagination, they became a dangerous shadow reaching toward the north. Then the king himself rode to Winterfell. Robert Baratheon, once a laughing young warrior, now a heavy man who wore his crown like a chain, came with his entire court to the land of snow and quiet honor. On the surface, it was a reunion between old friends who had survived rebellion together. Beneath that warmth, it was a recruitment. The king needed a new hand. The realm needed someone to hold it together before the cracks became chasms. Robert walked the crypts with Ned Stark among the Stone Kings of Winter. He spoke of Lyanna's death, of the war they had won, and the peace they had wasted. Above them, his queen Cersei watched with cold, green eyes, her golden children at her side, her father's power behind her. The journey north was framed as a hunt, a visit, a chance to escape the heat of King's Landing. It was actually a summons into the heart of a rotting kingdom. Ned Stark stood at a crossroads. One path was the north, his children, his godswood, the quiet safety of a land that still believed in old ways and simple honor. The other path led south to a capital of secrets and lies where the real price of power was always paid in blood. He did not want the hand's chain. He knew that kings brought death with them, yet Robert was his friend, his king, the man he believed he owed everything. It seemed like duty. It was actually a death sentence. Catelyn feared the danger. The letter from Lysa whispered of Lannister plots. The direwolves outside howled as if they sensed that the pack was about to be scattered. Still, Ned chose the realm over his own peace. He accepted the handship, promising to ride south and uncover the truth about Jon Arryn's end, to help a tired king rule a kingdom that was already slipping from his grasp. With that single decision, the North's long sleep ended. Ned's choice would cost him his life, send his daughters into captivity, drive his eldest son to war, and push his bastard into a fate beyond the wall. The War of the Five Kings began not with a battle, but with a quiet nod in a cold hall, as a man of honor agreed to serve in a city that devoured the innocent. When Ned Stark stepped south of the Neck, he crossed an invisible line into tragedy in ways that no one in that hall could yet see. And on the King's Road, as the royal party and the Starks began their journey, the first true cracks in the realm's fragile peace started to widen. Across the sea, a dragon bride and a Dothraki storm. those cracks did not stop at the neck. While the king's party rolled south through the green lands of Westeros, far away beyond the narrow sea, another road baked under a harsher sun. On that hot, dusty coast of Essos, a different kind of procession was forming, one that would change everything. There was no honor in this bargain. Only a frightened girl, a fallen prince, and a horse lord with power enough to buy a kingdom. Viserys Targaryen, last son of the murdered Mad King, stood in borrowed silks in the city of Pentos. He called himself the Dragon, heir to a throne he had never seen, a king in exile who owned nothing but his name and his sister. It seemed like fate had been cruel to him. It was actually his own hunger that made him dangerous. Daenerys was his coin. Barefoot on cold tiles, shoulders tense under a dress chosen by others, she was still almost a child. She remembered only half-formed images of the Red Keep, the shadow of a great throne, the whisper of the word dragon spoken like a prayer and a warning. Now she was told she would marry Khal Drogo, warlord of a vast Dothraki Khalasar, in exchange for an army that Viserys believed would sail west and win back his father's Iron Throne in blood and fire. To Daenerys, there was only fear. The Dothraki were a wall of bronze and leather and unblinking eyes, men who lived in the saddle and boasted that a king who could not ride was no king at all. Their braids were long, their bells chimed with every step, and somewhere among them rode Drogo, silent and unreadable, with a braid that nearly brushed the ground. She had no choice, no voice. She was a piece on a board she did not understand. The wedding was a blur of drums, shouting, and death offered as entertainment. Men fought to the death in her honor, as if her worth could be measured in spilled blood. Among the gifts laid before her that day were 3 stones in a carved chest. "Dragon eggs," said Illyrio the Magister, from the Shadowlands beyond Ashai. They were beautiful, scaled shells of deep green, cream and black, hard and cold, as if the fire inside them had died centuries ago. To the exiled Targaryens, they were a symbol of a lost age of dragons and kings. To Daenerys, they were more important than anyone could imagine, though she did not yet know why. At first, she slept beside a stranger and woke beside a Khalasar that spoke no tongue she knew. Her brother's hand on her arm was always too tight, his voice always a hissed reminder that her body was the bridge back to power. But the endless sea of grass had its own lessons. The Dothraki judged strength without caring about bloodlines or ancient sigils. A queen, to them, was a Khaleesi who could ride, endure, and command. Daenerys learned to ride. She sat a silver mare until her legs ached and her fear burned away in the wind. She watched the way Drogo moved through his people, how a single glance from him could still a quarrel. In the quiet of their tent, away from the stares and the shouting, she discovered that Drogo was not the brute she had been taught to expect. Slowly, hesitantly, a bond formed. The frightened girl began to speak, to ask, to demand. The Khaleesi was waking. Viserys did not change. As Daenerys grew in confidence, as the Khalasar began to look to her with a strange, rough respect, he only grew more bitter. He saw honor in nothing, only insult. When she carried Drogo's child, the stallion who mounts the world, the balance between them shifted. The sister he had beaten and sold now held the future of a warlord's line within her. That secret truth gnawed at him. His end came in a crowded hall, thick with smoke and the smell of horse and meat. Drunk on his own rage, he demanded his crown, waving a sword where no blade was allowed. Drogo answered in the only language he truly spoke. He melted gold in a pot, and poured it over Viserys' head, a gleaming, hissing stream that hardened as it flowed. The would-be king died, clawing at his face, crowned at last in a way that would echo through the years as a warning about the real price of power. Daenerys watched her brother fall, and something inside her turned to steel. The last male dragon was gone, and yet the world did not end. In the darkness of her tent, she ran her fingers over the cold scales of the dragon eggs and felt, just for a moment, as if something answered. When fire finally wakes them, her path will stretch far beyond the Dothraki Sea, across the narrow sea to the very heart of Westeros. But before the dragons can rise, the flames must first take everything she has left. And on a silent night, beneath a red comet that many will call a sign, Daenerys Targaryen will step into the fire, not knowing if she will emerge as a queen or as ash on the wind. The wolf in the capital. Honor versus the game. Far from that red comet and the crackle of dragonfire, another kind of heat ruled a different sky. Not the clean blaze of a pyre, but the heavy, breathless warmth of a city where lies hung in the air thicker than smoke. King's Landing did not sleep. It whispered. The capital was a maze of narrow streets and crooked alleys, pressed tight between the glitter of the Red Keep above and the dark reek of Flea Bottom below. In those cramped lanes, rumors moved faster than horses. A truth spoken in the shadow of a tavern could reach the castle as a twisted echo, bent and sharpened in ways its speaker would not even recognize. It seemed like a city of gold and marble from a distance. It was actually a city of secrets and blood. Into this heat rode Eddard Stark. He came from a land of snow and stone, where words were plain and honor was a kind of armor. As Hand of the King, he stepped into a role that had devoured better players of the game, bringing northern straightforwardness into a court that survived on half-truths and hidden knives. Robert clapped him on the shoulder and called him brother, but even that word in this place was thinner than it sounded. The small council chamber was his first battlefield. Peter Baelish lounged by the window, all mocking smiles and careful eyes. Varys floated in whispers and silk, speaking of danger in soft, precise phrases that never quite named a source. Renly smiled easily, but his gaze weighed every move. Around that carved table, power was traded in glances, in pauses, in what went unsaid. Ned spoke plainly and asked direct questions, and the others watched him like a man who had walked into a pit without seeing the snakes. His first real clash came not with blades, but with a queen. Cersei Lannister met him in gardens and corridors, her green eyes cool, her voice smooth as still water over sharp stone. When he confronted her about the death of Jon Arryn, about the Book of Lineages and the strange pattern of black-haired bastards born to Baratheon kings, she parried with contempt and warning. To her, honor was a story men told themselves before death. To him it was the only shield that mattered. Littlefinger, ever the pattern interrupt in a room full of solemn men, offered help with a crooked grin. He led Ned through the brothels of King's Landing to show him Robert's illegitimate children, those innocent faces with the king's dark hair and the same heavy features. A girl at a workbench shaping armor, a baby at a mother's breast. Each one was a quiet accusation against the golden-haired prince on the Iron Throne. Each one was more important than anyone could imagine. Ned followed the trail Jon Arryn had walked before him, from dusty records to living flesh, from ink to blood. He saw the truth forming, Baratheon black, Lannister gold, and the impossible match that sat the wrong child beside the king. The secret of Joffrey's parentage was a spark in a city soaked in oil. To Ned, revealing it would save the realm, prevent a false heir and a war of succession. To those who had built their lives on that lie, it was a threat that could only end in death. He warned Cersei instead of striking first. He gave her a chance to flee with her children, believing mercy would avoid bloodshed. It seemed like honor. It was actually a death sentence. In King's Landing, the real price of power was paid not by those who schemed best, but by those who refused to scheme at all. As his investigation closed around the truth that would change everything, the city itself seemed to lean in, listening. Whispers thickened. Gold cloaks shifted allegiance. Swords were oiled in quiet rooms. Ned Stark stood in the very heart of the Game of Thrones, still believing that truth could end the game. But in this capital of heat and shadows, truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. And the next move would not belong to him. The fall of the wolf and the birth of the war. In King's Landing, power never moved with a shout. It slipped from hand to hand in the quiet, in the way a single decision in one room could condemn a whole kingdom in the next. Robert Baratheon went hunting. It seemed like nothing. A king with a wine-sodden belly and fading strength, riding out with his retainers and his brother Renly, laughing too loudly at old jokes. Boars had taken kings before in Westeros, but this hunt was more important than anyone could imagine, because Robert's living presence was the last heavy stone holding back a darker flood. They poured wine into him, strong, sweet, and endless. A king who had once swung a warhammer at the Mad King now staggered through the trees, slower than the beast he chased. The boar gored him, ripping through flesh and muscle, and the great Robert Baratheon, victor of the rebellion, was brought back to the Red Keep on a litter, bleeding and broken, already half a ghost. On his deathbed, he spoke of tournaments and old battles, of the girl he had loved and lost. He named Ned Stark protector of the realm until his son Joffrey came of age. Ned, with his heavy sense of honor, quietly changed one word. He wrote rightful heir instead of son, because he now knew the secret of Cersei's children, the truth that would change everything. None of them carried Robert's blood. Ned believed in law. Cersei believed in survival. Littlefinger believed in opportunity. That was the real price of power in this city, not gold or steel, but the willingness to betray anyone who still trusted in honor. Ned tried to move first, sending word to Stannis, the older Baratheon brother and the rightful king by every law of succession. He planned to present Robert's will, reveal the children's illegitimacy, and place the crown on Stannis's head. But in King's Landing, the next move never belonged to the honest man. Cersei tore up Robert's will. The gold cloaks Ned thought he had bought turned their spears, obeying Littlefinger's quiet instruction instead. "I did warn you not to trust me," he told Ned, voice almost gentle, as the Stark men were slaughtered and Ned was seized in the throne room beneath the cold barbs of the Iron Throne. They threw him into a dark cell. The hand of the king, who had once swung ice, his Valyrian steel greatsword, in clean executions, now sat chained in filth, listening to distant bells. Outside, his daughter Sansa begged for his life, an innocent child caught in a game that would echo through the years. Arya vanished into the city's alleys, another child turned feral by the smell of death. Varys came. Others came. They did not offer rescue. They offered a bargain. Confess to treason, call yourself a traitor, praise Joffrey as the true king, do this, and you will live out your days at the wall and your daughters will be safe. It seemed like cowardice. It was actually a father's last act of courage, swallowing his honor to save the fragile lives he loved. So they brought him out into the blinding sun. The steps of the Great Sept were crowded. The same city that had once watched Aerys burn his enemies now pressing forward to see if this new boy king would show mercy. Ned confessed. He lied about himself for the first time the realm had ever seen, calling his truth a lie, and the queen's lie the truth. The crowd murmured. Cersei waited. Sansa wept, believing this humiliation would be enough. The plan was simple: a public show, then a royal pardon, and the dangerous Stark sent quietly to the wall. Then Joffrey spoke. In that one moment, a cruel child decided to be a king. He overruled his mother, his council, the script they had written for him. He ordered Sir Ilyn Payne to take Ned Stark's head. No exile, no mercy, just death. It was a pattern interrupt written in blood, a single, petulant command that would shatter the realm. The sword fell where ice once had, but this time upon its former master. Sansa screamed. Arya watched from the crowd, unseen, as her father's head rolled and the world she knew ended. On the battlements, birds took flight, startled by the roar of the people. Far to the north, Robb Stark received the news. A boy who had ridden south as his father's heir was now a son with no father, a lord with no king he could honor. The banners of the north and the riverlands rose, wolves and trout rippling in the cold wind. In a crowded hall, outraged lords lifted their swords and named Robb King in the North, resurrecting an ancient title not spoken since the Age of Heroes. On Dragonstone, Stannis read Ned's letter and saw his own claim as a grim duty. On the Reach and Stormlands, Renly gathered knights and bright banners, deciding that charm and numbers were enough to make a king. Each man looked at the same empty space where Robert had once stood and saw a crown waiting. One execution, mihi chumaith. A Sept's steps had done what dragons and conquerors could not. It fractured the Seven Kingdoms in ways that would soon reach every village and every tower. The War of the Five Kings had begun, and the realm was now aboard with too many kings, too much ambition, and not nearly enough honor. And as steel was sharpened and ravens flew, darker forces beyond the wall were beginning to stir, quietly reminding the world that these quarrels for a chair of swords were, perhaps, less important than anyone could imagine. Kings, crows, and the rising dead war spread like a storm no maester could chart. Banners rose and fell, and with each new king crowned, another village burned quietly in the dark. They called it the War of the Five Kings. In the riverlands and the north and along the coasts, it seemed like the whole world had chosen a sigil and a side. Stark wolves howled for honor and vengeance. Lannister lions roared for gold and power. Baratheon stags, split between brothers, lowered their antlers and charged. And from the harsh isles in the west, Greyjoy krakens uncoiled, reaching greedy arms towards the mainland, dragging innocent lives beneath the waves. For the small folk, there were no banners, only hunger and fear. Armies marched through their fields, taking grain, taking daughters, taking sons, leaving blood where wheat should have grown. Lords argued over who was the rightful king, who had the better claim, who had the stronger right. The peasants only knew that winter was coming, and their granaries were empty. Far to the south, on the Blackwater Rush, wildfire bloomed on dark water like sickly green flowers. Stannis Baratheon's fleet burned while King's Landing shook with screams and bells. It was a night of heroes and cowards, of Tyrion Lannister leading men through the flames, and Joffrey hiding behind stone walls, a boy king who wore a crown, but understood nothing of the real price of power. The city survived. The war did not end. It was actually only getting more dangerous. In a different river hall, Beneath stranger banners, another feast was held. Music played, wine flowed. Guest right was offered, that ancient promise of safety beneath a host's roof. Then crossbows sang and knives flashed. The red wedding turned laughter into choking sounds and oaths into lies. Wolves fell in a rain of bolts and steel. A mother's last cry echoed over a murdered king, and with it, northern hopes bled out on a stone floor. That night would echo through the years, a quiet lesson that honor alone could not survive in this game. While these kings and would-be kings bled each other, a different oath was spoken far to the north. On a wall of ice said to be 300 miles long and higher than any tower in King's Landing. Jon Snow stood in the cold, hand on ancient stone, and swore his life to the Night's Watch. He would take no wife, hold no lands, father no child. He would wear no crown and seek no glory. To many, it seemed like a retreat from the world. It was actually a step towards something more important than anyone could imagine. Jon's black cloak set him apart from the wars of lions and stags, but not from danger. He rode beyond the wall with the old ranger Corin Halfhand, walked through forests where even the crows were silent, and stared at the haunted mountains where wildlings whispered of dead men walking. The further north he went, the clearer it became that the true enemy did not care who sat a throne of swords. Signs appeared first as puzzles. A ranging party's horses found wandering, their riders gone. Corpses laid out in patterns on the snow, strange spirals that no wolf or kraken could have drawn. Then, on a cold, windless night, blue eyes opened in dead flesh. A hand that should have been stiff and harmless reached for a man's throat with inhuman strength. Fire worked where steel failed. Old tales of the long night, of white shadows and silent storms, were no longer just stories to frighten children. The wall itself, with its hidden spells and frozen ramparts, remembered what men had forgotten. It had been raised against the others, not against wildlings or exiles. Those ancient magics had been laid down in an age when Bran the Builder was more legend than history, when the first kings in the north were still learning what it meant to rule. Now, as Jon watched the dead stir and the wildlings flee south in terror, that buried purpose began to stir as well. Yet in the south, ravens carried different news. Who had won a battle? Who had taken a castle? Who had claimed a crown? Robb Stark dead. Renly Baratheon dead. Stannis beaten but unbroken. Joffrey still on the Iron Throne. A child king surrounded by vipers. Each letter spoke of victories and defeats, of lions triumphing over wolves, of krakens raiding the coasts. None of them spoke of blue eyes in the dark. This was the tragic irony of that age. While lords and queens plotted over chairs and titles, the dead gathered patiently in the cold, an army that did not eat, did not sleep, did not bargain. Every fallen soldier in every field was potential strength for a different commander entirely. Every unburned corpse was a future weapon. The realm thought it was bleeding for crowns. In truth, it was quietly feeding an enemy that would change everything. Jon Snow felt it first as a weight in his chest, a sense that the wall's shadow was longer than the reach of any king. He had taken his vows to defend the realms of men, all of them, from Dorne's red sands to the frosted shores of the north. But as he watched the horizon beyond the wall, where storms gathered with unnatural focus, a question formed that no lord in the south was yet wise enough to ask. What good is a throne if there is no living world left to rule? And even as that question settled over the wall like fresh snow, somewhere in the far, frozen distance, something ancient began to move again. dragons in the east, shadows in the west. Something ancient was waking in the far north. At the very same time, far to the east, where no raven from the wall could ever reach, another ancient power was being reborn in fire. On the red waste beyond Khal Drogo's funeral pyre, Daenerys Targaryen walked into the flames. It seemed like death. It was actually a beginning that would change everything. When the fire burned down and the ashes cooled, the Khalasar found her alive. Her clothes burned away. Her skin marked but unbroken, and 3 tiny dragons clinging to her like shivering winged children. They were the first dragons the world had seen in more than a century, and their thin cries would echo through the years. At first they were fragile, almost innocent. They perched on her shoulders, curled in her lap, fed from her hand. She named them for the men whose blood had shaped her life and loss: Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion. But even as hatchlings, they were dangerous. Their little tongues of flame could sear meat and singe hair, reminders that each soft scale and bright eye hid a weapon more important than anyone could imagine. As they grew, so did her sense of herself, not just as a frightened child sold to a horse lord, but as a queen with a claim. Her road bent toward Slaver's Bay. In Astapor, she stood before ranks of unsullied, eunuch soldiers bred for obedience and traded one dragon for an army. Or so the masters thought. With a single command in Valyrian, she turned the unsullied against their owners and ordered the city's chains broken. It seemed like justice. It was actually the beginning of her experiments in rule, in ways that blurred mercy and vengeance. In Yunkai, she freed more slaves and sent them into the night with a choice: follow her or not. In Meereen, she nailed cruel masters to posts and tried to sit in judgment like a true queen, discovering the real price of power each time she signed a decree or ordered an execution. Her dragons grew with her ambition. Drogon's shadow stretched over fields and walls, his fire able to burn whole ranks of men, or later a fleet in a single screaming pass. Rhaegal and Viserion followed, less wild but no less deadly. What had been children became weapons of war, and then something in between, creatures she loved but could not fully control. When Drogon killed a peasant's child by accident, Daenerys chained 2 of her dragons in the dark. The third vanished into the sky, a reminder that some power will not be leashed. While she wrestled with chains and crowns in the east, Westeros bled in quieter, crueler ways. The Red Wedding had shattered the north, Robb Stark and Catelyn dying beneath Frey banners while music played. That betrayal violated honor and guest right, and it would echo through the years in every northern oath of vengeance. In King's Landing, the Lannisters tightened their grip around the Iron Throne, with Tywin's cold hand guiding the realm and his cruel grandson Joffrey wearing the crown. New players slid into the gaps left by dead kings. The Tyrells wrapped themselves around the throne with smiles and flowers, while the Boltons took Winterfell under a flayed man's banner, their knives and secrets carving fear into the north. The game of power grew more tangled, even as none of them understood that their victories were built on sand. Beyond the wall, other forces were moving. Melisandre stared into her flames and saw visions of darkness and a hero reborn in smoke and salt. She spoke of Azor Ahai and the prince that was promised, titles that clung to Stannis, then to others, like cloaks no one quite fit. Far in the haunted forest, Bran Stark's fall from a tower led him to rise into something stranger, his powers awakening under the roots of the world. With the three-eyed raven, he learned that time itself held secrets, that the White Walkers were not just legends but a marching truth. Politics and prophecy began to twist together. The lords of the south argued over crowns, while in the far east a Targaryen queen raised dragons, and in the far north an army of the dead gathered under a night king no maester had written about in centuries. Two storms were forming on opposite horizons. One wore dragonfire, one wore ice. When Daenerys finally sailed west and the Night King finally marched south, those storms would meet over the same broken realm. Old grudges, old oaths, and old wounds would have to face a simple, terrible choice: cling to the games of thrones, or fight for a world where anyone could still draw breath. And even then, the living would learn that choosing survival did not mean escaping the cost. The last game. Long night, fallen queen, melted throne. Choosing survival only delayed the question that haunted every hall and campfire. After the dead were gone, who would rule the living? Before that answer, there was the last great gathering. North and south, old enemies and uneasy allies, drawn like moths to the cold flame of Winterfell. Jon Snow rode beneath gray banners of the direwolf. Daenerys Targaryen came with unsullied spears, Dothraki screamers, and dragons that blotted out the pale sun. Around them, lords of the Vale, the Riverlands, and the Free Folk made their quiet, fearful peace. It seemed like unity. It was actually a truce held together by frost and terror. On the snowy fields before the castle, they laid their plans. Brienne in shining armor beside Jaime in tarnished gold. The Hound glowering, Arya watching with those sharp, tired eyes that had seen death wear many faces. Sansa wrapped in northern furs, guarding her people's honor as fiercely as any blade. The last of the Night's Watch, the last of the wildlings, the last dragons, all of it. All that blood and history, waiting for a single night that would change everything. When the long night finally came, it did not arrive with fanfare. It came as a wind that blew out torches and hope, as a storm of darkness swallowing the horizon. The Dothraki lights vanished one by one, like candles pinched between cold fingers. The dead moved in waves, a silent ocean of broken faces and open mouths, crashing against stone and flesh. From above, dragons fought through blizzard and cloud, their fire-brief streaks of color in a world gone black. Down in the Godswood, beneath the red leaves that had watched over so many Stark secrets, the Night King walked with the patience of an ancient winter. His blue eyes were calm, almost curious, as if he were there to collect a debt owed since the first long night. When Arya leapt from the shadows and drove Valyrian steel into his heart, he shattered like glass caught in sudden sunlight. The dead collapsed around the world, from Winterfell's fields to the farthest reaches of the north. One stab, one breath, and thousands of silent warriors fell forever. That would echo through the years, but victory brought no true peace. In the smoky halls after the pyres burned low, Daenerys stood apart. She had crossed a world to save strangers, and they still whispered Jon's name more warmly than hers. Jorah was gone. Missandei was gone. 2 dragons remained, but the girl who had walked into her brother's funeral fire felt more alone than ever. The North celebrated survival, yet watched their queen with measuring eyes, already wondering about the real price of power. Whispers of Jon's parentage spread like a new contagion. A hidden Targaryen, the trueborn child of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar, more important than anyone could imagine when Ned had first brought that quiet baby home. To some, Jon was the rightful king. To Daenerys, he was one more betrayal wrapped in honor, one more reminder that love, for her, always bent the knee to fear. By the time her host sailed south, her dream of breaking the wheel had sharpened into something more dangerous. Cersei used innocents as shields. Varys turned to treason. Tyrion's counsel faltered. When Missandei died on the walls of King's Landing with Dracarys on her lips, Daenerys heard not a plea for mercy, but a final, burning command. On the day the city fell, the bells rang out in surrender. Lannister men dropped their swords. Mothers clutched their children in the narrow streets. For a heartbeat, it seemed like the war was over. Daenerys sat upon Drogon's back, looking down at the Red Keep that had been her family's and then her father's prison. A lifetime of fire, exile, and betrayal pressed against her ribs. She believed that only she could save the world, and that mercy now would invite the same old chains to grow back in different hands. She chose dragonfire. Not just on soldiers, but on stone, on homes, on the innocent and guilty alike. King's Landing became a furnace. Its alleys turned to rivers of ash. In that roar, the line between liberator and tyrant finally burned away. This was the tragic end of a child who had once walked into flames to hatch new life and emerged instead as a queen who remade a city into a grave. After, there was only quiet ruin and one last decision. Jon Snow, who had died for the living and bent the knee for peace, walked to her in the shattered throne room. Snowflakes and ash drifted together through the broken roof, settling on the iron throne like pale dust on old bones. The chair, forged from 100 conquered swords, waited behind her, the symbol of centuries of struggle and death. He told her there was another way. She told him there was not. Their final embrace was tender, almost gentle, until the knife slid between her ribs.